people like trying to rush through life. Like, where are you trying to get to? You know, this is something, take your time on this ride.
There's so much anxiety around just getting to the next thing. And I noticed that for myself is like, I don't know how many times I've rushed my kids out of the house for like menial tasks. Like we're going to the pool and for some reason we had a goal to get there by 10:30 or so. And it's like, we're like rushing to get out. It's like, what the heck are we rushing for? So
Yeah,
like,
who put this deadline on you?
like
It's
exactly. Like,
self-imposed.
where did this thing come from? Like, I have to get there. Like, I know I don't like being late, right?
Yeah,
Honor times, but that was not an appointment,
yeah.
just, family time. So, um, well, thanks for taking the time to join me, man.
No,
I
it's gonna be awesome. I dig what you do. I dig the content coming out. I'm like, yeah. So when you asked me, I'm like, heck yeah, I'm looking forward to this.
appreciate it. Yeah. Um, so I was just thinking, kind of tell your story, how you got started with the Fraternity of Excellence. If you're okay with talking a little bit on, this is rest and recovery, but I don't talk around this recovery type, but a little bit on the sobriety piece. I think it was more of a choice than a problem per se. I don't want to
Yeah, yeah.
mischaracterize.
There was no DUI. There was no
Yeah,
domestic. It was just
yeah,
me realizing like I was gaining weight. I wasn't recovering from my lips. I just couldn't outwork it anymore. And
right.
maybe that's an age thing. Maybe it's just a lifestyle thing. But
Yeah,
the yeah, the impact it was making on the body, I just couldn't beat it. So I had to drop it. And
yeah.
so that was over 2 years ago. And so it's honestly, I don't miss anything. But I understand when I first thought it was recovery, when I first came across your work, I
Mm,
wasn't thinking like body recovery, mind recovery. I was thinking recovery, like addiction recovery.
yeah,
And so I found you by accident and really dove in, but I was like, I like this too, because I want to take care of my body and my mind and everything. So
yeah.
it actually worked out really well.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, and that's where like going back to the beginning, like wrestling with, branding or whatever and ideas and how to present it the best way so that, people are actually listening and catching it. And hopefully the goal is right, educate, equip, and empower. So to do that, all those things. So but yeah, I'm enjoying it, learning a lot the last 2 years. So
Cool.
thanks for the follow and support.
Absolutely.
All right, why don't we kick it off then? Well, welcome to another Rest and Recovery podcast episode. I've got Zachary Small, Navy veteran, proud father and family man, founder of the Family Alpha, Fraternity of Excellence, or forbearing clothing company. So very little going on in your life,
Yeah. Not too much.
but thanks, Zach, for joining me.
Absolutely, Scott. This is awesome. Like I said, I was looking forward to the discussion. Before we started recording, I came across your work and I was really connecting with it. And we kind of had the joke like rest and recovery. And so I recently dropped alcohol 2 years ago. And when I came across recovery, I was thinking that. And along the way, I found out, you know what? This guy's actually talking about taking care of my mind and my body, my spirit, all of that. And so
Yeah,
I'm actually going to rest and recover, but it has nothing to do with that type of recovery, but it still works out. And
yeah.
so I've been listening to a lot of content. I'm just happy to be on here and to join the squad.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I appreciate the support. I'm glad it's been able to be supportive for you and uh, it's whether it's a happy accident or not, it's great to have you on here too. And I can echo the same sentiment, involved in the group that's similar to yours, and just the whole idea of, reclaiming ourselves and, my own story of the rest and recovery piece of it, but also guys like ourselves not taking care of ourselves to be able to do the things we want, not just for our own personal prowess, but the family alpha is one of your names. Like you're out leading your family and want to be there for them. And we need to take care of ourselves to do that. So I know that's an area that you're focused on as well, on specifically for men. So I appreciate your mission and ethos and everything that you're doing.
No, thank you for saying that. It's one of those things where people really do follow your example more than your advice. And
Hmm.
so if you're not living it, you can't give it. And that's one of the biggest things I see. You had a live stream where I was hopping on and trying to get some answers. And I'm like, man, this guy, he lives this. And so when he gives me that information, he's telling me what I can't remember his name. And I apologize for that. But basically, the input he gave when I asked the question, I ran it through that filter. I was like, this man does this. It's not something that he read about. It's not something that he heard is popular. He
Right.
does this and it works. And so people like that credibility, I think that's missing in a lot of accounts online because they push an image of who we think we want them to be. as opposed to who they are. And so they're telling you the things they want you to know, or they feel like they're supposed to say, but
Right.
not what they actually do. And so that authenticity, that's absolutely essential to deliver a lasting message. And so you live what it is you do. And similar here, I'm not telling you anything that I'm not doing myself. And so by doing that, I'm giving information that I know works. And that's the information that gets results.
Yep, 100%. And it's a journey too. I think an important thing that I know I had to go through for myself mentally was the whole perfectionist mindset, imposter syndrome thing of kind of navigating those mental hurdles to get through to that it's okay to fail, but to lean into that a little bit, but it doesn't mean, I'll call it good intention misapplied, right? Oftentimes leaning into something to do it well, but I may mess up, but that's okay. And I don't have to be the expert on everything. I'm a novice at myself, work in progress. But surrounding yourself with the individuals that know a little bit more than you or have a specific domain expertise that you can grow into, and then be able to share that to the next brother who they themselves are maybe a little further behind on that particular area.
No, that's absolutely correct. And when you do that, that creates, long-term sustainable growth. And so when I see you, when you share your struggle, I can better relate to you and see myself in your shoes because I struggle. But if
Right.
you're always perfect, I'm like, well, I can't relate to him. And so now I'm less likely to follow what you're saying because I'm not like you. You're perfect and I'm not. But when you
Right.
like when I slip up, when I share my struggles, it's always from an angle of like, hey, I fell down and here's how, and here's what I'm doing to get back up. And so
Right.
when other people follow that, they see this man isn't perfect, but he's perfectly chasing those imperfections. My flaws, I try to turn them into my features. And so that's how people can relate, and they understand that they don't have to get it right. And there's nothing wrong with getting it wrong. There is something wrong with getting it wrong and just accepting that and not trying to work to improve it. And so through training, through your recovery, through your fitness, even parenting, marriage, there are going to be times you slip, and you're not a bad person for slipping. But I would say you're not going to be the person you want to be if when you slip, you just throw the towel in. Oh, that's it. So be it. Like, no, find somebody else who's been through that. How did they get up? Try what they did. And
Right.
that's where I see a lot of success.
Yeah. I really like the flaws to features. I like that term in
I took that from George Bruno. I don't know if you know who he is, but he's a big YouTuber. George Bruno, check him out. He's a man of many trades. There's not really one way to define him. He's big on life. He's big on relationships. He has had a huge beard. And so he's
Okay.
a lot of things, but George Bruno, definitely check him out. But he told me that. He's like, yeah,
Okay.
just take your flaws and turn them into features, man. I was
I
like,
like
dude,
that.
that's incredible.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, we all need those little statements. I know I do better with metaphors. And I always joke. I came from a sales background, so I always need pictures. But those little things that kind of get us through, that keep those little mantras or minds, to get our mindset directed to where we want to go.
Well, yeah, and they're quick. So when you slip, you can just like floss to features. I can fall
Awesome.
back at any podcast and be like, oh yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
My motto for the family alpha is acta non verba. That runs through my head all the time. Acta non verba, which is Latin for deeds, not words, which basically
Hmm.
is you can say a lot, but if you don't live a lot, if you don't follow that up with action, then you don't really mean it. And a great example, I love my kids more than anything. Well, then why are you obese? Do you love them enough to get yourself in shape?
Hmm.
Because that's showing me you love your kids more than anything. You love them enough to face what could be a very uncomfortable fact about yourself. You haven't been really taking care of yourself nutritionally or with your activity levels. And so, do you love your kids enough to do the hard thing, get rid of some of those comforts,
Hmm.
have some of those very, uncomfortable conversations,
Yeah.
and push yourself in the gym with walking, with your cardio to where you can go out and you can play in that swing set. You can climb that mountain with them. You love them enough to get in shape that you can go and live a longer, more active life with them throughout their years. That's showing it. That's the deeds as opposed to the words.
Absolutely. I love it. Yeah. I mean, action speaks louder than words, 100%. What was the phrase? I forget who that was. Speak softly and carry a big stick. You
Is it
know,
Patton?
Patton, I think
Or
it is.
maybe Churchill? I don't know.
Yeah,
But
one of the
it's
two.
a good one.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, I mean, and I think, in today we can get so caught up, including myself, um, in the voyeurism of social media and seeing the excellence in another person, and not applying it in my life and getting caught in that OODA loop
Mhm.
of consumption and not applying. And I found myself in that exact spot before where at one point I was just like, I just got to stop all these things. Even consuming books is great. But unless you're taking it, digesting, and taking one or two things from it and applying it to your life, it's just gluttony, really.
That's so
Um,
funny. I literally just finished a Twitter space where I was saying, if all you're going to do is listen to us in this Twitter space, but not go and apply what you learned on this Twitter space, you just wasted an hour of your life. Like, you're a well listened person. You know, if I only read these books, but I applied nothing, I'm a well read man, but I'm not a good man because I'm not applying the knowledge that I'm gaining from these brilliant minds. And
yeah.
so a great way is, you want to be an athlete, you want to throw really good pitches, you can read all the books about pitching, but until you go on the mound and you throw that ball, you're not a good pitcher.
So rewind a little bit in history for you. Where was it where like you had a change within yourself that I'm presuming at some point you weren't fully living out this lifestyle we're talking about? What was the pivot point for you, the inflection point that kind of was like something's got to change, and then you started to do that and think, well, crap, this is working. Like I'm applying and doing, and what was that moment for you that changed it?
That was without a doubt joining the Navy. I was a poor student. I was unmotivated. I was insecure. You name it. The list of like issues men have. I checked all those boxes, man. Unfortunately, I wish that wasn't the case, but it was. But when I joined the military, something clicked. You know, I remember going. I was in Boston. We MEP'd out of there, and so we have our pre boot camp day. We're sitting there hanging out with these other guys, and I was kind of quiet. And normally I'm just talking to people, whatever. But I was
Hmm.
just really lost in thought. And my thought was this: I'm heading to a place where nobody knows me. I'm heading to a place where my history isn't out there, my failures aren't out there, my who I've been up to this point, they have no idea. And so I also have the opportunity here to become who I want to be there. And so all the doubts and insecurities, I said, I'm done with that. I'm going to go there and just I'm going to go all in on this. I'm going to be the most confident man. I'm going to speak from my chest. If I'm wrong, I'm going to own it and I'm going to outwork everybody else. And I did that. I went, and the man you see sitting before you right now,
Yeah.
I've never gone back. This is who I was I joined September 5th in MEPS, and September 6th was like my Navy date. So on September 7th, when all of it was executed, I have been the same man September 7th, 2006 until today, until this exact moment. I just flipped that switch and I just never went back.
That's awesome. So you just decided,
It
literally.
was just a mental choice.
Yep. That's fantastic. I like the personal reset perspective, and the fact that, you took an opportunity that was a blank slate and didn't carry the past with you and was like, I'm going forward. There's no yesterday. There's just tomorrow.
Well, that's it. You know, we tell ourselves these stories as to who we are, but they're rarely based in truth. People say,
Yep.
I'm a bad person, I'm a lazy person. Like, get rid of those labels and just shift them a little bit. I'm a motivated person. I'm a driven person. I'm an energized person. I'm a happy person. Start telling yourself that and you'll embody it, or you'll
Hmm.
find your way to embody it. And
Yeah.
another thing, you were saying there about the yesterday and the past, a lot of people today, they don't think they're good enough or where they need to be because they're looking at somebody else today. And you
Yeah.
can't do that either. So you can't avoid your past, but then compare it to somebody else's present. You have to look at you today. I look in the mirror and I face myself, and am I better than I was yesterday? That's my
Yep.
only goal. Let's try again today. Let's go all in today.
Yep.
And for anybody listening, just because I flipped that switch, there was still a lot of inner work I had to do. There was still a lot of challenges I had to go back and like I had to fix, but I did it from a position that I felt I was worthy enough to fix them.
Yep.
And I couldn't have always said that. I didn't think I was good enough, but now I know I'm good enough, and so I'm worth the effort of overhauling a few things.
So what was like for you where you were able to acknowledge, because the progress, because I'll give an example. I'm a runner, and like, or whenever you work out, it's going to always feel the same, but yet the plates are going to change or my pace is going to change, but it's still going to feel the same. So how did you acknowledge, what did you use to measure yourself and realizing, hey, I'm progressing, and not get too bottlenecked on the old self when you hit those moments and it felt like the old, whatever, lazy guy, the whatever, fill in the blank.
That's a really good question. And so there were two things that stand out when you were saying that. I don't think I've ever mentioned this before or shared it. So nobody's ever asked the question just like that, which is good. And so two things came to mind. I remember there was a moment where the RDCs, so the recruit drill, I don't know what they were called anymore, coordinators, they left. Basically, the drill instructors are gone. And a few of the guys came to my rack and they're like, hey, man, how do you get it? And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, you get it. Like, you're doing well and you're working and you're getting through all these things so quickly. Like, how do you get it? And I remember laying there. I'm like, this is the first time possibly ever somebody was looking up to me. And so that was my first time, like, oh, so maybe this sounding off and being confident and just going after the thing, people are noticing that. And so that was a moment that these are both kind of intangible, the examples I'm giving, but that was a personal leadership moment where I realized I could, and I did help them and they did well. I told them how I was doing what I was doing and just to go after it and stop thinking, just do the thing. And they're like, oh, cool, that worked. The other part, like I said, I graduated like 320 out of, let's say, 328 in my high school. That was after staying back. And we had, I would say, 15 plus special needs kids. So there were kids with literal learning disabilities who had a higher GPA than I did when I left high school. And I almost failed again after 5 years. So I stayed back and still couldn't get myself to the middle of the pack, at least. And so that's where I'm coming from. And I share that to share this. I graduated academically first in my boot camp. I graduated second in my A school. Every school I went to, I was number one or number two. How does somebody also, I ended up getting my bachelor's degree and master, you can't see them, they're on the wall there, but my bachelor's degree and master's degree. How did somebody who is so dumb go out and perform these things?
Yeah.
I stopped hanging on to who I was. And so I realized that when I made it through that school and I put the effort in and I actually studied and kept my attention on the thing that mattered instead of letting it spray everywhere, I was actually pretty intelligent. I could actually pull these things off. And so that was another learning moment where I realized I'm not dumb. I was just misapplying my skills. I was like the monkey. I was trying to see how fast I could swim, or a fish trying to see how high I could climb. I was comparing myself in the wrong environment.
Yeah.
And so here I was like, let me focus, knock this out. And I did really well. And so that moment I realized, like, you know what, Zach, maybe everything you've told yourself about who you were has been wrong and you've been going about it the wrong way. And so I would say those two moments really stood out. And that's when I really saw, like, I'm onto something here. Things are changing and I'm a different person. And these metrics are kind of showing that.
That's awesome. No, and I appreciate that because I think that first one you said it wasn't too intangible, but it kind of is in the sense of you have the tangibility is the guys showing up and recognizing something in yourself that they themselves were like, he's doing something different. What do I need to do? So one, it's great they did that. And then two, give you some confidence to be able to kind of just keep going and be like, now I got to hold myself accountable to guys are watching. And you probably before that didn't realize they're watching.
It's funny now that you're saying that. It takes a lot for men to go out and ask for help. And in boot camp, you're around motivated men. We're younger, like we were, let's say, roughly 18 to 23 range. And these guys, it was more anger. They're like, what the heck? Like, is their competitive side was like, how are you beating me? Like, you need to tell me your secrets. So it was pretty cool because they did have to get over a little bit of that ego and resistance to ask for the help. But when you're good at something, and I'm sure you've seen this, whether it's running or academics or whatever it is, if you're good at it, the best of people who want to be great, they will get out of their own way, just ask the question, how are you doing this? I want what you have. How do I get it? And then they will listen and they'll apply in their own way. And it goes back to what we were saying earlier of reading or just listening to podcasts. You apply the information. That's where you get the results. Absolutely. And so, like I said, those dudes, they got out of their own way. They asked the question and then they crushed it.
So let me ask you this, the Family Alpha, how do you take those lessons for yourself that you learned as an adult, I've learned as an adult, and work it into your life now and to try and the goal of every parent is to get our kids further along in life than ourselves, whatever that domain is. How are you applying those things for them to be able to receive and go after stuff to learn well, regardless of whatever it is?
So that's actually a very easy one. When I was, let's say, 6, 7, 8 years old, I knew I wanted to be a dad and I knew what type of dad I wanted to be. I called this shot way back when, man. And so I love when people ask that because I've been thinking about this my whole life and I love talking about it. So actually I just started another company with a man named Anthony Migliorino called Oak and Rock Fatherhood. And that's the space I was referring to. And so what we're looking to do there is make fatherhood and the discussion of it normal. And so how did I bring those lessons and apply it as a dad? I embody my values. I don't just espouse them. I live out everything that I say that I do and I show my children, I treat them with adult respect by
Mhm.
remembering that they're kids. I follow peaceful parenting, so there's no yelling, there's no spanking, there's no even punishments. But my kids are frequently complimented when we're out in public, when they order their food, they show their manners. They're both tough kids. And that goes against a lot of what the world has taught us.
Yeah.
You need to be hard on kids to prepare them for the world. I realized I was brought up with corporal punishment. My father was a military man, so there was a lot of strict guidelines we had to follow. And as a kid, I made this choice. I said, I'm going to take a lot of what my dad's doing, but I don't like that he does this, this, and this. I'm going to drop those and I'm going to go out and I'm going to do this my way. And so what I did was I never forgot what I needed as a kid.
Mm.
I never forgot that boy. And I still to this day, there's a
Wow.
childlike wonder to me. And it's the healthiest of ways. And you have it too, or else you wouldn't be doing what you do. Like you're curious about things. You like to go out and learn. The way you talk to people, you get really animated. And in the best of ways, you're like, yeah, this is interesting. Let's talk about this.
Right.
A lot of men have lost that. And a lot of men, they can't tap into it. They're consumed with work. And when they get home, they're consumed with the distractions on the news or politics or God knows what. There's so many things to distract you nowadays.
Yeah.
But me, I'm like, I remember what it was like to be that kid. And what I needed was somebody to listen and to encourage, someone to be there. I started my day today at the baseball field. So my son plays baseball and we were out there 7:30 to or 7 to 8:30, just getting after it. And this isn't for AAU, this isn't for fall ball. This is because my son wanted to train and he asked me and I said yes. And so I'm there, man. And one of my biggest another quip is I give my kids more presence than presents. And so I give them presents with a CE
Yep.
more than I give them presents with a TS. I
Yep.
can't buy their love, but I can make sure I'm a part of their life. And that's the best gift I could give them. And so that's how I deliver it. I just never forgot what I needed. And I see what they need as individuals unique to me. And I meet them at that level.
That's awesome. I really appreciate that because it's something I've been wrestling with myself as a father of three girls. And one thing I've been looking at too is you kind of touch on it is oftentimes we will apply adult perspective on children and or expectation, I should say. And there may be some ounce of truth to that, but they're not there yet. So they're not on the learning curve yet. So you can't, it's like expecting someone to understand calculus in second grade.
Yeah.
They're not mature enough to comprehend that kind of thing. So to have an expectation of a child on something that they've not experienced before or have no context to, it's really um, inappropriate for us to even have that kind of view on it.
You see a lot of dads, they project what they have faced in the world onto their kids,
Hmm.
but without even stepping back and realizing those kids aren't at a job. Those kids, like they're going to have the world be hard enough on them when it's time. And
Yeah.
so I was on the space I was just on. I was talking about exactly that. My kid, like I asked them today, some of the grass is growing in on our gravel driveway. And so I said, hey, I've got a bunch of calls today. Can you guys go and do that? And I can see them from my window. And they've spent half the time laughing with each other, the other half chasing the chickens that keep chasing them. And then they're picking grass. And I know that there are some dads who will be yelling at them, stop fooling around, stop wasting time. Man, they're doing what I asked and they're having fun in the process.
Yeah.
It's summertime. I'm letting them be kids and I will never not let them be children. And now let's not take this to the extreme. Some people might hear that as I'm not teaching them to slack or anything like that. This task is not a make or break task. I just want to get rid of some grass, man.
Right.
And so
You
let
don't
them
have to do
have
it.
yeah, it's such a like small thing, but some men make everything a big thing. And
Mhm.
I don't. I pull back and I recognize these are children. They're having fun in the sun. Why would I want to break that up? Why would I not want to allow them to be youthful in their youth? And so I refuse to strip my kids of their childhood. And I let them play, I let them do this. The result though, when I tell them like, hey, this actually does matter, they jump to it. They know, and I've earned their trust, and I do this for them as well. If I really need something, they're there for me because when
Mhm.
they really need something, I'm always there for them. And so, like I said, this grass situation, that's a little example because it's happening. Like right now, my daughter just came in to get some water. It's like her 40th trip to get some water. Like I know that they're fooling around. Like I know it's probably gonna be a squirt gun fight soon. I'm
Right.
okay with that.
Well, and I think that's a great point too, like characterizing things appropriately. And that's where we've gone wrong. And you kind of mentioned that, the spanking or yelling and like having the proper degrees of the infraction, I'll call it, right? We have it in the judicial system supposedly, and like you have this kind of offense, you get, you're not going to get a life sentence for stealing a pack of gum, but it's still a character thing. And so that's where I think we've lost it, where we're not focusing on the character development, but expecting the result as if they've already gone through all that stuff. Does that make sense?
It does, but it also highlights something that I have made a personal mission. Brendan Murata, he wrote a book called Children's Justice. Great book, highly recommend it. But basically, he talks about how any underserved community, especially recently in our recent times, has been met with overwhelming support. And so you've seen it with Black Lives Matter, you've seen it with the LGBTQ plus and all that. You've seen any underserved or minority population is met with, we see you now, we're here to fix a lot of wrongs that might have been had, but never for kids. And if you go through all of history, kids have never gotten that. And I always found that interesting because they're in, I believe it's 19 states, it might be 14. Corporal punishment is legal in the public education system. And I'm like, I couldn't imagine sending my kid to school knowing their teacher could legally hit them. Why are we allowed to hit kids? I could go to jail if I hit my dogs too hard. But if I hit my kids and I say it's discipline, well, that changes the entire discussion. Oh, okay, you're fine. And so basically where I'm going with this is that our kids are not heard by pretty much anybody ever. They're told what to do. Sit down, be quiet, color. I'll tell you what you feel. I'll tell you what you're allowed to do. If parents were to sit and receive more and listen and actually let their children have a voice and speak up, I think that you'd be able to avoid a lot of the issues that we see. A lot of the mental health. I mean, I've got a few friends who are in the Rhode Island mental health industry. I'm not sure what to call that, but that industry, they work with mental health kids, and they said it's overwhelming. They cannot meet the demand, and it's only growing due to a lot of the COVID restrictions that went down, due to just the what's going on in the news, all that. I mean, you get it. And so basically all that stuff is really impacting our kids. And I'm sitting here and I'm looking at my two, and they don't even know, COVID's not a thing in their life. They're happy. Like I said, they're running around picking grass and having squirt guns. Wars over there. And so if we were to meet our kids at that level and maybe give them a little bit of a voice, we would see that they would avoid a lot of the issues that peers are going to fall into. And it's because they don't ever get it out. They don't feel like they have a role in the world. And so we could meet them and help them become the adults we want them to become by treating them like the adults that I speak to you with respect.
Right.
I speak to my kids the same way. Some adults like, oh, you're an adult, I speak to you, but my kid, who cares? Well, they're your kids. You're modeling the behavior. And so they're feeling like trash because you treat them like that. I think we could do a world, we could change everything if we could fix the home and then go out from there.
That 100%, 100% agree with you. And I know for me, I can relate to a lot of what you're saying in that, candidly, I've misapplied myself in the past and have been working through ways that, and it's like most of the time, if I'm real candid, those were my issues, not the kids. And then we're more raw at home. We know we can get away with it. Not hear me when know we can get away with it, but if I do that, like I've had to apologize to my kids more than I care to admit, because of those things. And knowing that at the end of the day, that was a stress from something else that was then misapplying in their direction because they did what? Something remedial they didn't realize. Like they accidentally spilt some milk or something silly. Like
they acted like a child.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And it's like, okay, it didn't do anything significant. It's a little bit of milk, and guess what? Accidents happen. So it's like, why are we making mountains out of molehills, right? What's that old saying?
Well, what I really like about that, and a good way to tie it into recovery, the way I'm choosing to use the word recovery, is a lot of these men, and predominantly it's the father. It's don't make me tell your dad, and so the dad becomes the authoritarian. But this man is coming from the factory, stressed out from work. He gets home, he just wants to relax, and the kid spills the milk, and you erupt. And again, it's like you said, it wasn't the milk. It was the stress carried from work. What I try to do with men that work with me and Anthony, we try to get those men to focus on how they can manage their stress. Little tools, little movements they can do. So their recovery, they're going to recover from those bad habits they have developed over the years, or maybe what their dad did. their dad also. Don't talk to him when he gets home from work. He needs time. And it's unfortunate because a lot of men are losing out on opportunities to connect with their kids that they would otherwise have.
Yeah.
If you could learn how to deal with the stress from work, if you could learn how to heal from maybe the trauma of your childhood, you would then be able to go forward and meet your kids where they needed you without any of that pressure in your head. And I fully understand if we're going to say that kids are struggling, there's a buddy, Aaron of mine, who on Twitter brought this up the other day. If we're going to accept that kids are going through a lot of mental health issues due to COVID, why are we overlooking the parents and the adults whose jobs were on the chopping block all the time, who
Yeah.
had to find a way to navigate schools? And do I mask my kid today or not mask my kid? Are they
Right.
going to school? Oh, wait, there was a case, so now my kid's quarantined, but I have to go to work. That's a lot to handle these past 2 years. And so parents are stressed the heck out too. And so
Yeah.
what we're trying to do is to meet them to understand you need to heal from any of your past traumas. You need to face your current routines and habits now. And you need to look to where you want to be and the type of relationship you want to have so you can start working towards that today. And that requires you to handle stress. It requires you to sort of reflect on the default behaviors that you have conditioned into yourself. And also it requires you to view your children as being worthy of the effort. If you can do those things, that's when the milk gets spilt and you're like, oh, hey, bud, you
There's a
crazy.
paper
Let's go
towel.
get that. Here's a
Yeah.
paper towel. You whatever, it's not a big deal because everything's not a big deal. But when you're walking around on eggshells, it is. And that's unfortunate how many homes that's happening.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you that it's not just the kids, but the adults as well with the concept, because so much was taken out of your control, right? You were told to do all these things in domains that had not been. So like some basic things that we all need of security were kind of ripped out of our control, and now you're just like kind of floating in the wings. And now we have an opportunity to reclaim that and do it better than before, hopefully. Because a lot of the anxieties were already there. The last couple of years just kind of amplified and accelerated some of the things. But I liked the fact that you're addressing it from, okay, especially for the fathers coming home from work, what are these little tools that you can kind of reclaim yourself on the way home? So you're decompressing on your
That's
drive or your
exactly it.
commute rather than stewing about the previous day. And so then you walk in the door, and it's okay. Everybody needs some like decompression time. That's not the point, right? It's finding ways to kind of hedge on that either before or on the way home to get yourself in the better mindset so that you can just be, that kid, like you were saying earlier, like that I'm a bit the same way of just being fun and roll on the floor with your kids or whatever. And, just spend some time with them.
Well, and you view that as a worthy endeavor too. You start to see like, oh, this matters. If you come home from work and every day when you get home from work, what you do is you grab your beer, you kick your feet up, you watch Netflix. You think, well, there's a roof overhead, there's food on the table, there's clothes on their back. I'm doing my job as a man. But we're talking like 1920s there. It's
Right.
2022. Like your kids need different, they need more than that. And we're living in an age where all the tools are available to you. But
Mhm.
if you really look at this and think about the impact that has on a child, your kids don't see you digging those holes. They don't see you making those sales. They don't see you at the factory putting that stuff together or sitting in your office, doing whatever it is you do for a job.
Yep.
What they see is when I'm old, I come home, I sit down, I watch Netflix, I drink beer.
And that
That's
sets
the
the culture.
example. That's
Yeah.
all they see. And
Yep.
that's, hey, when I'm a dad, I'm going to do it too. And what I'm trying to do here, and what I'm trying to do with Anthony, is we are the first generation of fathers who have been brought up to understand social media and technology to the degree that we do. Our grandparents, if you told them to sit down to a podcast like this, they'd be like, what is that? What is a podcast? Never
Right.
mind what's a video cast you could do. And so we're able to use this technology to make ourselves better men to the point where you and I are having a discussion. Earlier I was having a discussion with several men and women from across the globe at the same time, talking about fatherhood, talking about family life, and all those things. We're no longer confined by the physical proximity, which once limited us. You
Yep.
only knew the dads on your kids' sports teams. You only knew the dads who were at the local pub. And if at whatever standard they were at, you kind of injected and fit somewhere in there.
Yeah.
Nowadays, I'm rolling with men like you. I'm rolling with the men I was talking to earlier. Like I'm with top 1% guys where I'm like, I want to be like them. I'm going to be so much better than my local crew. I want to be the best. And that's now a global metric. It's like there's a lot of men you can compare yourself to in a good way. You can kind of get insight and tips from. And so I talk to
Absolutely.
these guys every day, and it's great.
And it's kind of like this great accordion because you can aggregate everybody together, show the number, and then decentralize leadership, right? Send everybody back to their neighborhoods, and then you can have those like your experience in the Navy. You can have those moments where you're dadding up, whatever you want to call it, manning up,
Mhm.
and showing up the way we're talking about. And then other dads are going to be like, "How are you doing this?" Right? And at some point, it's going to scale, and it's the ground game that has to happen to really transform culture back to where we need it to be, but better.
Well, and that's the biggest impact right there too. So not only do you become Superman because you now, because of your network, you can go and find answers to almost anything. And so
Mhm.
when my family comes to me, I'm not like, oh, Scott said this. I'm like, hey, here's the answer. And then I can just tell them like, oh, my dad's awesome. He always knows what's going on. But
Right.
also, so I coach both of my, whenever my kids play sports, I volunteer to coach because I have the time and I can do it and I enjoy it. And so my son with baseball, I've coached him for 8, 9 years now, and I impact all those kids too.
Yep.
And sometimes I'll be at practice, I'll see the dad always watching, like, hey, come on out here. Now that dad is involved in my world. I get him spun up. His son is looking at him. When they go home, there's always a big smile on their face. Now that dad sees the role he plays to where, hey, practice isn't the only time I should play catch with my kid. I should go at home and play catch. I should kick a ball there. I should
Yep.
help him develop his skills, lift weights together, whatever it is. You can develop these great habits by when you learn like this conversation. I take this and I bring it to practice later in the week. And now I'm talking to 20 other kids and their parents about the lessons we've shared here. Now that's a community growth. And so now the impact of the whole world having on me, I can spread to them because maybe they don't have the reach or the access that I do. But I can tell them the lessons I learned and they can take that. And now their homes are more peaceful with
Yep.
less spanking and yelling. They're more educated and they're reading like this whole shelf right up there. That entire shelf is fatherhood books. So people are willing to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars growing their financial understanding, their physical fitness. For some, it's sex and
Wow.
relationships, like their dating, their marriage, things like that. But very rarely do you see a man with a bunch of books on fatherhood. I'm changing that, and now dudes are coming up to me like, "Hey, I bought this book. I love this part." I'm like,
That's
"That's
awesome.
changed me. That
Yeah.
we're changing the landscape here."
That's so encouraging too. Yeah. And I can appreciate too. I grew up the same way, so I was fortunate to have some examples from both my parents. My dad, same thing, coached every team I played on, probably, and I've been able to kind of pay that forward with my girls when applicable, with various sports or coaching, and just showing up and just being there on the sidelines, even. Um, and this is kind of silly, but I've got daughters, like I said, so one of them does cheerleading, and it was the parent-student game for basketball, and the cheerleaders were cheering. So at one point, I got on the sidelines and started jumping with them. It's like, why not? Like, the whole point is to like, just because it's not basketball doesn't mean I can't show up for my daughter and do the same thing with her and participate in some way, shape, or form, regardless of the activity.
You just made me realize. So, 100% with you on that. 100%. Like, I would be that dad too. I would actually, if you were out there jumping, I'd be like, I could jump higher. It would be a competition between us, but
That's
in the
right.
best of ways.
That's
But
right.
I put a post on Twitter. I actually should throw it on Instagram. Where my daughter, I put a whole thing of, it's funny you say that. I had my hand around her. I'm like, hey, my daughter's in competitive cheer. I was like, and
Mhm.
so I'm sitting there with her and I'm like, I'm a proud cheer dad. Like, I'm going to rock my cheer stuff. When I go there, I'm
That's
yelling
right.
for her. I had a shirt on that had like the big what's a megaphone. It was all like bedazzled across my chest because I take pride. I meet my kids where they are.
Yeah.
And in no way am I going to sit here and have you say, oh, that's compromising your masculinity, or in any way are you disserving. Like, my daughter is doing something. I'm 100% in on that thing as much as my son. And the
Yep.
problem with the men who have an issue with that, those are often the men who live vicariously through their kids. And so they need their kids to achieve certain things so they feel good. I don't care what my kids do. I don't care what sport they play. They're free to play whatever. My son plays
Mhm.
baseball. I've never played a sanctioned game of baseball in my life. I was a football guy. I've literally never worn a little league uniform, never swung a bat in a game, nothing. Outside like pick up or baseball, yeah, but never official. He's like, hey, I want to play baseball. Let's go. I taught myself the game. I YouTubed coaching tutorials, and we
Mhm.
won a butt ton of trophies along the way. So we're good at this. But the thing is, when my daughter came out and she's like, oh, I want to try this, I coached soccer, basketball, coached it.
Yep.
Uh, Here, I didn't coach that. They wouldn't let me. But that would probably be up my wife's alley. She was a cheerleader, so that would fit a
Okay.
little more appropriate. I would keep hogging all the limelight from her. So she gets one now and then. But basically, her doing that, dude, I'm just there to support.
Yeah.
I have my own competitions. I'm like this podcast. I have my own mission, my own goals. I don't need them to win trophies for me to feel good about them or myself.
Yeah.
They can win or lose as long as they're happy. I'm good. I'm in my own competition with life. And the fathers who have the issues, who will be like, oh, you're jumping with the cheerleaders, bro, you should get to that level. Get
Yeah.
to where you're not insecure about supporting your child, whatever it is they do.
Yep.
And so I take a little bit of an aggressive take on that one, because I'm just so tired of hearing guys like try to somehow demean a father being involved in his child's life.
Yep.
That's the most beautiful thing you can see. Like, that's what we need more of, not less.
Yep. Agreed. So where do you think this is going for you with the various things you've got going on? You've got the clothing line, but Fraternity of Excellence. Um, what's your next horizon, or where do you want to go from here?
uh, Global domination with peaceful parenting. No, what we're trying to do here, I mean, we've got the membership community and the Fraternity of Excellence. I've got the blog and all that with the Family Alpha. I do enjoy writing and podcasting there, but my emphasis right now has really been placed in Oak and Rock Fatherhood. I think Anthony and I are onto something that we're hoping to take this to a mainstream level. We're
Mhm.
hoping to bring this discussion and put it at the forefront of everyone's minds, because we don't see many men doing it.
Yeah.
There is a lot of peaceful parenting coming from men who they take I'm trying to say this right. They take a softer approach to the discussion. They come at it from an angle of like, open up, be expressive, share your feelings. Um, that's not really how Anthony and I go about it. You're going to see two men who speak directly, kind of like this conversation. This is how Anthony and I speak. It's honest, it's to the point, it's about the subject. Let's go forward.
Yeah.
So he's a tattooed Italian guy with a beard. I'm this bearded white guy coming in, the veteran, and we're saying, don't hit your kids, but be a strong man. It's a
Yeah.
unique spin on it. And we think that if we can get more men to kind of separate their masculinity from their roles and the perception that society has placed on them, and you kind of combine them, you being a strong man does not mean you're a domineering man. You
Right.
can be physically fit, mentally confident, squared away and chasing a mission, and yet you can sit down and speak to your kids in a healthy and respectful manner. You can lead your wife in a great way. Connecting with your kids doesn't make you soft. It's the strongest thing you can do. But and I've done this earlier in this episode, and we do it all the time. The emphasis isn't on changing your kids. It's on you changing and being your best self. You getting over, like I said, those past traumas. You
Yeah.
getting over the losses that you carry around. You letting go of societal expectations to who you should be. And we believe that if you were to do that, you can become the man you were meant to be, and that's who will best connect with your children. And you set them up for success too. I want my kids to be as free from societal conditioning as humanly possible.
Yeah.
You see a lot of what's going on in the world, and I want my kids to choose their world. I don't want them to be thrown into a mold where they've got to act a certain way or be a certain person for them to receive companionship or just success in their life. I'm handing them a machete, and I'm saying, go ahead and whack your own path in life, because I'm a veteran, dude. And I was supposed to get out of the service and become fat. I wasn't a Navy SEAL. And so only the Navy SEALs get to open podcasts like Jocko and Goggins. Only the SEALs get to do these. I'm like, no, man, I was an engineer. I'm doing this. And
Yeah.
so I'm forging a whole path here. A father, I'm married, I'm a veteran, and yet I'm in shape. I'm talking on podcasts. I'm having discussions on what it is to be a man. I'm sort of forging my own way here and figuring out as I go. And I believe that with Oak and Rock Fatherhood, I'm really enjoying the emphasis on the family unit.
Mhm.
And so that's, like I said, that's getting a majority of my attention, while I'm still focusing these other aspects too, because I do believe it's the man himself. So that's where I focus. But the family, the marriage, those are extensions of that man. And so I
Yeah.
kind of put them into one group.
No, it makes sense because I mean, at the end of the day, that the whole point of self-development isn't just about improving yourself, but it's really the ability to serve well.
Yeah.
And that's really the principle too of even this podcast about rest and recovery is, I've been saying respect the rest lately because I think that's a big critical thing. It goes around the what you're talking about on the misapplication of manhood a little bit, and that we're not respecting the rest as a key ingredient just as much as, the 1 rep max or the speed work or fill in the blank of the exercise or whatever you're doing, the 100 reps of foul shots. It's equal parts. And that's what produces the results of being able to step back and the value of sleep specifically, but then taking care of yourself so you don't have the dad bod, right? Eating well, getting your mind right so you're perceiving things correctly. So I think those are all critical elements that will behoove the man and woman for that matter.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when you look at it from that angle, I mean, it's success begets success. Once you
Mhm,
start doing one thing right, it leads to the next
for
thing.
sure.
And
Yeah.
so if you're working out and you're busting your butt and your body's sore, the last thing you want to do is compromise all that work you did by going and pounding a gallon of ice cream. You're like, you know what? I'm going to eat a little bit better. Well, now that you're eating better and your body's sore, you're like, I'm tired. Instead of staying up until 1 a.m. every day just to wake up at 6, maybe 11, maybe 10. Maybe you can get in bed by 9 and just read until 10.
Right.
And then you work your way to, all right, I feel really good in the morning.
Yep.
All of it all bleeds into each other. And so to me, rest is as important as growth. And so
Mhm.
that sleep is just as important as that 1 rep max. They
Yep.
they feed together. The max is going
Exactly.
to strain you and help you grow and put that stress on you. This is where you deal with that stress and you repair so you can go do it again. And
Yep.
again, this isn't about being the best in 2022. This is about being the best for the rest of your life.
Yeah, and that's a great longevity. What's the end state? Because we're not all professional athletes, but you want to have that professional mindset. Forget where I've heard that, but are you a professional or amateur, basically, and what's your approach to things? And the professional mindset is really to do it with excellence, and but then also recognizing like it's a steady progress over time. It's not an instant success.
Mhm.
It's that 10-year overnight success.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
well, Zach, I want to be respectful for your time, man. Brother, I appreciate you taking the time to join me, to provide the insights that you're providing. And I look forward to seeing where you're going with Oak and Rock. And keep me posted on where that's going, and happy to share what I can to help support the mission.
No, absolutely. Thank you for having me on. This is a great discussion.
So I do like to close things out with a couple personal questions, a bit of a hot seat, nothing too heavy. But what are you reading right now?
Right now, I'm reading the Book of Five Rings by Miyamoto Musashi. It's actually right here.
Cool. Not heard of that one.
It's
All
it's got an Art of War vibe to it.
right. Okay. Cool. What are you listening to, be it podcast or music?
Music, I listen to Rob Bailey and the Hustle Standard. So my favorite song is Outwork.
Okay.
And podcasts, I'm actually listening to the Annie Grace This Naked Mind podcast. And so I
Any
was tuning into
Grace?
that. Annie Grace, yeah. So
Any
she's a
Grace?
big sobriety advocate, and she
Okay.
just she has guests on. I was actually a guest on there. That was one of my goals when I got sober, and I did it last year, so that was pretty cool.
Awesome. Congratulations. All right. What is your go-to rest and recovery method?
Uh, Sleep. So I'm not sure how to answer that. So I recover. I do the foam roller a lot.
Mm,
So foam rolling is a big one for me. I do a lot of stretching. I do a lot of dead hangs, but I really have been trying to prioritize sleep, and
good.
so I didn't get enough, and so I've dimmed the lights, reading the books. I'm kind of putting myself into the proper mindset because I was the guy who was pounding monsters at 9 at night and then trying to go to bed at like 11. And so it wasn't working out. It was taking a toll, but I've really dialed in the supplementation. So I'm making sure I'm getting my vitamins. I'm making sure
Cool.
that I'm stretching my body out, airing it out. So that's where I go to
Awesome.
recover.
Awesome. Well, Zach, thank you again, my friend. Take care.